them from being able to eat from the other tree. Because Jesus went for us, we can now know what it's going to taste like to do the tree of life and the tree of the fruit of knowledge. Smyrna was the crown of life. Pergamos is the hidden manna, a new name. Thyatira is to rule over nations with the morning star. Sardis was faithful, honored, and raiment white as snow. Philadelphia was going to have God's presence, a new name and place. And Laodicea share Christ's throne. Now, that sounds like heaven, right? And I don't understand why was it divided up in this way. I don't know. As we go through it, maybe the Holy Spirit will reveal it more to all of us. But I'm kind of hoping that I'll get to have a taste of all of those things when Christ returns and I'm with him. So who are the seven churches? And here are the different things. People say the seven churches in Revelation are literally those seven churches. That's it. It's just about the seven churches in Asia that were active and going right then, okay? Some people say, no, the seven churches are the seven stages of the church age. And I've got a little chart, I'll show you that, and it's interesting how they overlap, okay? The next group of people say, well, they're the seven types of churches that we see today. Like right now, there are those seven types of churches out in Christendom. And there's the dead church, there's the church that's lost its love, there's the church that tolerates idolatry. Then the next group says, well, these are actually talking about the seven groups or seven types of people that you're going to find in every church. People who've lost their first love. People who are just dead. I mean, so you can see how all four of those things. And this is the seven stages of the church age. I thought it was a cool chart, so I thought I'd throw it up there. It says that Ephesus went from 33 to 100 AD. Smyrna was from 100 to 312. Pergamum was from 312 to 606. Thyatira started at 606. Sardis at 1520. Philadelphia at 1750. Laodicea at 1900. And they're all going to continue right up until the rapture. Okay? Anybody think, oh yeah, I like that one? I don't. I don't understand it, therefore I don't like it, because that's the little pact I have with God. If I don't understand it, I'm not going to like it. Of all of those things, though, here's what my personal take on it is that he is absolutely talking about those seven churches, and he's talking about seven types of churches. And he's talking about seven types of people inside a church. Now, that other thing, I'll be honest, I just don't understand it. So if you want to debate me about it, the debate's not going to be very exciting because I'm just going to go, yeah. Because I don't know. I don't see how, if one of those church ages is completely gone, then why do we still see churches that look a whole lot like that? So I don't necessarily think that's a great pattern, but maybe it's talking about the church as a whole, which guess what? How many of you all get to see the church as a whole? Only God sees the church as a whole. So, God's looking down and he's seeing the whole church, and he could probably say, well, on average, this is Ephesus, and on average now we're into this, and on average now. But we don't get to see the average. We only see what's right in front of us. So I've spent a whole lot of time trying to confuse you so that you'll be impressed with what we're going to do now. The first church. Why start with Ephesus? Again, we know that God does everything for a reason. There's always order to what he does. But why John and why Ephesus? Ephesus, we're told by church historians that Ephesus was the church that John was pastoring when he was sent into exile. Okay? So with that being said, of all the churches, if God were going to speak to me and I was going to get a message, and I was going to get a message to North Pompano Baptist Church and First Baptist Church Birmingham and First Baptist Goodlettsville, Forest Hills Baptist Church, Lyle Lane Baptist Church, First Baptist White House, or Gateway, if he was going to give me seven messages to those churches, which one would I be the most anxious to deliver? the one that was closest to my heart, the one that was closest to my, the place where I still know people. I have friends there. I have loved ones there. I have people who have ministered with me. And so it makes sense to me that John is going to start, or God is going to start with John, with the group of people that he was the most intertwined in. Now, John, remember, John is the leading speaker of the day on the Christian circuit. Everybody wants to get John for their weekend event. He's the only one who's still alive who knew Jesus, who can actually say, let me tell you what Jesus smelled like. Let me tell you what Jesus was like whenever he was eating. He had this really cool thing he would do. John was the only one who could still speak about Jesus from a totally different angle than anybody else. I know him. Guess what you and I can do when we talk about the Lord to people? We can tell people, I know him. I mean, when that song, I Know My Redeemer Lives, who's the girl who sings that? Huh? Nicole Simons. And she said, I know he lives because I talked to him this morning. And I believed her. You know, when I would hear her sing that, I would go, oh, man, she did talk to him. We get to tell people from a very different perspective than somebody who just reads the Bible and they it's just dry facts. It's not dry facts to us. It's a living, breathing thing. So here we are, Revelations chapter 2, verse 1 through 7. I believe that John was pastoring this church. And so as he's moving forward, this is where he starts. So, to the angel of the church in Ephesus, write, okay, to the messenger, to the shepherd, to the pastor of the church in Ephesus, write, the one who holds the 7 stars in his right hand, the one who walks among the 7 golden lampstands, says this. In other words, John, I want you to take a note, and I want you to tell him that I've got him in my hand, that it's me. It's the Redeemer. It's the Messiah. It is the Christ. Let him know that this is coming straight from me and that I hold him in my hand. Now, again, hopefully most of y'all know me by this point well enough to know I'm not the power-hungry, maniacal kind of person. I'm not that at all. But I know that there are pastors out there who it's all about them. That brings a funny memory to Sally and I, but never mind. So anyways, when I think about the fact that I am in his hand, that is powerfully exciting and completely horrifying at the same time. I am in his hand. The shepherd of a church is in the hand, the right hand of Jesus. And what does the right hand represent? Authority and power. So what does that mean? Oh man, I'm in the seat of power. I'm the closest one to the power. I don't want to get disintegrated by the power, I don't mind being consumed by it. I just don't want to be eliminated by it. So this is part of that thing. The right hand represents authority. This double-edged sword that's coming out of his mouth and speaking and all this other stuff. You have authority, but you're also held in a higher amount of authority. So Jesus is speaking to his bride. And that's a really important thing too. Let the church know, the one who holds the 7 stars in his right hand, the one who walks among the 7 gold lampstands, says this. I'm speaking directly to my church, to my bride. Verses 2 and 3. I know your deeds and your toil and perseverance, and that you cannot tolerate evil men, and you put to the test those who call themselves apostles. They are not, and you found them to be false. And you have perseverance and have endured for my name's sake and have not grown weary. Deeds are things that you've done. Toil bears witness to the difficult environment in which you did those deeds, and perseverance is a result of working against an obstacle. Julie and I were talking the other day about if you take a worm crawls into the gets all wound up, the chrysalis or the cocoon or whatever you call that thing, okay, and he's in there, what's he becoming? Becoming a butterfly. What happens if you think, you know what, I'm going to help him out? That thing looks so tight. I'm going to kind of cut it so that it's not so hard for him to get out. They've done that. Guess what happens to the butterfly? It does not have enough strength in its wings to fly. The struggle of getting out of that cocoon is what gives its wings enough strength so that it can fly. So what does God allow his children to do? He allows us to go through struggles. He allows us to work against something so that we can become stronger. How many of y'all would like to be strong? Now, I love the fact that I can lay up in the King of Kings and Lords of Lords' arms, and that he's got everything and I don't have to do anything. But I also like the fact that he wants me to experience what it feels like to be strong and powerful and potent. Right? Anybody else want to feel strong and powerful and all that stuff? Why is it that we love the Avengers and things like that so much? We like it when we see somebody have power, especially over evil. So he says all these things. The deeds. They couldn't tolerate evil men. They tested anyone who claimed the office of apostle. Now we're going to take a little sidestep here. The office of apostle. Again, this is one of those things where some people say the office of apostle is no longer a functioning office in the church today. There are some people who say, oh, yes, there absolutely is the office of apostle. Well, Mike, what do you think? Well, I think what I think doesn't really matter, but I'll tell you anyways. When we look at the seven apostles, and these are not actual pictures of the seven apostles, an artist rendering of the seven apostles. What are they really? We're talking about the seven disciples. And there are those who say, well, the 12 apostles are the original 12 disciples, plus who took Judas' spot? Matthias. Very good. Thank you. And then, but who's another apostle who everybody recognizes as an apostle, even though Paul? Okay, so look, this can't be something that you go, Mike believes something other than I do. I'm out of here. Please don't be that way. But I personally do not believe that the office of apostle shut down when the church began. I don't think there are as many apostles as people claim that there are today in today's world. I think anybody who runs around going, I'm an apostle, probably isn't an apostle. But what do I base that on? Well, okay. In 1 Corinthians 12:28, it puts at the top of the list of appointments that God makes in the church, apostles. He doesn't say in that scripture, and I used to put apostles and some prophets and some teachers, and at one time there was apostles. He says there are apostles and there are prophets and there are teachers. So to me, it makes it be part of an active list. But also, if we look at Acts 14:14, but when the apostles Barnabas and Paul heard of it, they tore their robes and rushed out into the crowd crying. Okay, Barnabas was not one of the original 12 disciples. Now I know that, well, Paul gets brought in because he and Jesus spent some time together, and he had that cool encounter and all that other stuff, so he gets grandfathered in. Well, what about Barnabas? I just think that the Bible it leaves some room for us to go, maybe there still is the office of apostle today. I don't really have a problem with that. As a matter of fact, there's one guy who I believe, he told me one time in a very private moment, he goes, please don't tell anybody this, but I believe that God has me in a position of an apostle. And see, that was the first sign that maybe it was actually accurate, was he didn't have that on his business card. I'm an apostle. Please vote for me. It wasn't that at all. But he felt like he was in that, that was the call on his life from the Lord. And it looked to me like it fit that. So I don't think that it happens very often, but I do think that it can still happen. So the church of Ephesus has persevered, endured, not grown weary for Jesus' name's sake. But why? Here's where the problem lies. They were doing a lot of good stuff, but why were they doing all this good stuff? Man, because they really love Jesus. I don't think so. Because he says, okay, what I have against you is this. Revelations 2, verse 4. But I have this against you. You have left your first love. Look, we know people all day long who do good deeds, but they don't do them because they love the Lord.